One of the most requested topics that we receive in training is that of V&H lookups. Lookups can do some powerful things for you in Excel. So today we're going to take a look at what V&H lookups are, as well as how to create them using the exact match type of formula. Let's take a look at the first thing we want to accomplish in creating our lookup. So we have this spreadsheet here of a list of products. What we would like to do is to be able to type in an inventory number in cell A5 and then have it give us the corresponding product description in cell B5. This is a perfect way to use an exact match type of lookup. Before we dive in and start creating our formula, let's take a look at how this function and formula is laid out. So first of all, like every function or formula, you're going to start with an equal sign. Then the name of this function in this case is VLOOKUP. So we're going to start with a VLOOKUP. Then you open your paren. So let's look at what the criteria is inside of our parentheses for VLOOKUP. The first thing it wants is a lookup value. A lookup value means what cell in our spreadsheet has the information that you want me to find in this table. Then it wants the table array, meaning what are the cells of the entire table. So you select and tell it where the table of information is. And then because it's a VLOOKUP, it wants to know the column index number, meaning out of all the columns I chose, you have to count them, what's the number of the one that has the information in it that you want me to spit back out for you. And then lastly, it wants to know, is this a range? In other words, does my number fall in a range of numbers or is it an exact match? In this case, it's an exact match, so we will use false for our range. So let's try this out. In our spreadsheet, we're going to create this formula. Now, we want to write the formula where we want the results to be displayed. So that's in cell B5. That's where we want this description to kind of be spit back out. So that's where we're going to start. We'll type equal VLOOKUP. Once we open our parenthesis, you can now see the little syntax helper below that's telling you the first thing we need is that lookup value. So what we want for the lookup value is the cell that's going to have the information we type in other words, our inventory number that we want it to find. So we're going to click on cell A5. And we type a comma then to tell it that we want to move to the next criteria in our function syntax. And that is now the table array. It wants to know where's the table of information that we want to find this in. And so we want it to look inside cells A8 through B24. That's our table. So we're going to select those to insert it. And we type our comma to move to the next criteria now. Now wants to know the column index number, meaning out of the two columns that we have selected, which one, if we count them, has the information that we want it to spit back out. We selected two columns here, and it's column B, the second column that we selected that has the information we want it to return to us. So we are going to type a 2. After we type our comma, it moves us to the last criteria that it needs for our function. And that is this a range? Meaning, does our number fall in a range of numbers or is it an exact match? In this case, it's an exact match. So we need to type false because it's not a range. Or you can also select it from the little pop-up list here. And the last thing we need to do is close our parenthesis and then press enter to make our function stick. So we have a little NA in that cell that we wrote our formula, and the reason is because we don't have an inventory number yet typed into A5. So let's do that. Let's go to cell A5 and we're going to type in one of our inventory numbers. And once we press enter, it should display the description of the corresponding product for that inventory number. So that was using a VLOOKUP that was an exact match. What about an HLOOKUP that's an exact match? What's the difference? So we're going to look at how to do that next. However, let's look at the syntax and criteria for an HLOOKUP versus a VLOOKUP first. When you're looking at a VLOOKUP and an HLOOKUP, they are almost identical except for one component. A VLOOKUP wants to know the column index number, meaning that you are looking vertically across columns. Whereas if you type an HLOOKUP, it wants to know the row index number, meaning it's looking horizontally across rows. That is the only difference. It's VLOOKUP looks for the column and an HLOOKUP looks for the row. So let's try that out next. So in this spreadsheet, what we want to do is we want to be able to type in a month in cell K15 and have it give us the total quantities that were sold that month in cell K16 based on the table below where you can see the months, the year-to-date quantity sold, and then their totals at the bottom. That's what we want to do. So we're going to write our formula, our HLOOKUP, in cell K16. We start this time by doing equals H lookup and then open our paren. Then it wants to know the lookup value. What cell has the information that we want to look up in our table? And that is cell K15. So we'll click on that to insert it. After we type our comma, it now wants to know the table array, meaning where is the table we're going to find all this information. So we're going to go down below here and we are going to select B22 because we want to get those month names there, those headers, all the way through G29 because we do want the information at the bottom there of the total monthly quantity sold. Now it wants to know, after we do our comma, the row index number because we're doing an H lookup. It wants to know out of the rows we've selected in our table, which one has the information we want to spit back out. It would be great if we could just say row 29 because that has the information that we want to spit back out. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It wants us to actually count all of the rows that we have selected in our table. So if we count these, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It is the eighth row out of all the rows that we selected that has the information we wanted to spit back out. So we type in 8. Then after we type our comma, it now wants to know, is this an exact match? Or actually it wants to know if it's a range, and it is not a range, it is an exact match. So we say false, it's not a range, because we are looking for an exact match. There's 1 month and 1 total quantity sold. We'll close our paren and press enter to make our formula stick. Now let's test it out by typing in some of the months and seeing if we get the corresponding quantity sold. And it looks like it's working just as we expected. Now, let's take a look at one other trick I'm going to show you to really round out this whole spreadsheet and these functions that we just did. When we create this kind of exact match type of lookup, it would be really handy if rather than having to type in the information into the cell, people could just click a drop down and select it. That will stop us with typos and it'll also make it a lot quicker for people to do things on your spreadsheet. So I'm going to show you how to do that. First thing we want to do is select the cell that has the location where we type in our information. In this spreadsheet, it's on cell A5. Click on the Data tab up on the ribbon, and in the Data Tools group, click on Data Validation, and then click on Data Validation from the menu. In this dialog box, in the Allow field where it says Any Value, click that drop down and choose List. Now we want to click in the Source field and then go out into our spreadsheet and select all the cells that we want to source our list, meaning all the cells that contain inventory numbers in our sheet. That then populates the source field with all of those cells that have inventory numbers. This will automatically create our list for us. Once you click OK in the dialog box, you should notice now that there's a little drop down arrow next to cell A5. That means there's a list here. Let's try it out. As we scroll through the list and select different inventory numbers, notice that it updates the description on the right in column B5. Let's try it out on our other spreadsheet with the other H lookup that we created as well. We want to select cell K15, which is where we want to populate our drop-down list. And once again, we want to click on the data validation button and then choose data validation again. We want to select list from the drop-down. Now we're going to click in that source field so that we can then go out and select the cells that we want to be our list. We want to select all the cells that have the names of the months in them. So that is going to be cell B22 through G22. Let's click OK and then test it out. We should now see the little drop down arrow next to cell K15. And when we click on it, we should see all of our months. And just like that, we've created these really cool drop-down lists that people can select that then populate information and give them some matching results. Now you can see how cool it is to do V&H lookups. Stay tuned for part 2, where we will talk about how to actually do V&H lookups when you are using a range and why that can be important and how useful it can be.